All right, Phil, if you want to open it up.
All right, so you can hear me now, huh?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Get my agenda back here. All right, we will call the meeting to order. I believe it's about 12:06 right now. And our first item is we will have a period of public comment. There's a 5-minute limit per speaker. And if you have signed up to speak, we'll let the people there in the room call out the names of those as they come up on that.
Okay, can you hear me, Tara?
Yes, now we can hear.
Okay, I apologize. I was having a little bit of a difficulty. So for our welcome, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who are joining us virtually, thank you for joining us today. And if you would like to speak for public comment, please type the word speak into QA and we will recognize you at the appropriate time, at that time. To begin, we do have people who have pre-registered to speak, and we will begin with, and I hope I pronounce your name correctly. I believe it's Abi Oyegon. Abi Oyegon. You have been unmuted and you can go ahead and speak, please. Abi Oyegon. Oyegun. So Tara, I'm not hearing that person speak. Were you able to unmute that person, Tara? If not, we can move to the next person and we can come back. Abi Oyegon, if you can hear us, if you can type speak into the chat. Yes, Abi is here. I see that you're here. Okay. For some reason, we're having some difficulty with your audio at the moment. We're going to come back to you, see if we can resolve the technical matter that we're having. But we do see that you are on the call and that you would like to speak. We will come back to you in just a moment.
I tried unmuting her again. Abby, can you try again?
Yes, can you hear me?
Awesome, there we go. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You can go ahead with your comments, please.
Thank you. I like to start by saying good morning. My name is Abi Oyegun, and I'm an attorney with Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta. And before I get to my comment, I want to begin by commending your efforts on this past election. Notwithstanding the record-breaking number of votes, your poll workers did a really good job in handling the high volume. In preparation for the election, my organization conducted a program, a nonpartisan election protection program that included poll monitoring and a voter hotline in 8 languages. While we were happy to note that the process went fairly smoothly, we did note some areas that could be improved for the upcoming runoffs. These include poll worker training to help them assist voters when they need to cancel their absentee ballots in person and cast regular ballots if they choose to do so, and knowing when a voter may or may not use a provisional ballot. Ensuring adequate access for voters who have limited English proficiency, providing multilingual signs and other election materials at the polls, and I think most importantly, ensuring that all voters have easy access to absentee ballot drop boxes. We are currently in a pandemic, and a lot of people, as we're spiking every day, are very concerned about catching COVID. So I think it's really important in between the winter, the cold weather, and the pandemic that we Cobb County Board does a really good job of ensuring that there are enough absentee ballot drop boxes that are also accessible to make sure we have a safe and secure option to cast our votes. We are ready and willing to work with you if you wish to do so, help meet these goals for the upcoming runoffs, and we will be here for you if you need any help. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. And We have another speaker now.
Yes, we do. Our next speaker is Jacqueline Beditapour.
All right, please go ahead.
Jacqueline,
hear me?
you're unmuted.
You can hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I am Jacqueline Beditapour, the chair of the Cobb County Democratic Party. And I wanted to commend Janine Evler and the Board of Elections for a very well-run election. For the first time in several cycles, we did not see long wait times on election day. The polls opened on time, equipment was set up and operational, and there were not any significant reports of problems at the polls. Comparing this election with the 2016 general election, the 2018 general election, and the 2020 primary election, where we saw long wait times and significant voting problems, well, it's like comparing night and day. There was such a notable improvement this time around. And why did we see such notable improvements? Largely, I think, because of expanded absentee voting and in-person early voting opportunities. It takes the load off precincts on election day. We have asked for those expanded voting opportunities for several years now, and I'd like to thank you for finally delivering on that. We saw the results. So for this election, we had 3 weeks of in-person early voting in all regions of the county from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., 2 Saturday voting opportunities, and 44% of the total votes cast were during that in-person early vote period. For this election, we had the Secretary of State's online portal to request an absentee ballot, and we had 16 absentee ballot drop boxes throughout the county. 38% of total votes cast were done so by using an absentee ballot. Only 18% of total votes cast were on election day. That and the fact that significant improvements were made in poll worker training and recruitment, logistics planning, and setup procedures resulted in a smooth voting process on election day. So I'd like to express a heartfelt thank you to Janine, her staff, the board, and the countless poll workers and personnel that made everything run smoothly. Now, coming on the heels of a well-run election, the best run election I've experienced in many cycles, we have people that are not happy with the results. Republicans claiming voting irregularities and fraud, making these claims without any evidence whatsoever, simply because they lost. Where were these concerns for election integrity in 2018 when the Republican Secretary of State administered his own election for governor? Where were those concerned citizens when thousands have been inappropriately purged from the registration rolls? Where were they when votes were rejected without sufficient notification due to perfect match signature requirements? Where were they when wait times at the polls were in excess of 3 hours in predominantly African American and Latino communities? Where were they on June 9th this year when 25 out of 39 precincts in Cobb County experienced significant and serious voting problems, and 25 of them were in District 4 alone? We didn't hear from them then, but lose an election or two and how they howl, again, with no evidence. And so now, after working overtime and countless hours, election staff is compelled to work through the weekend, overtime, long days to do a manual recount and audit. A monumental effort to be completed in just a few short days, with taxpayers footing the bill as COVID cases are spiking because the GOP are sore losers. This is expensive political theater at best and wasteful of taxpayer dollars. I'll close again with thanking Janine and the election staff for all the hard work. I appreciate the improvements and investments you have made in our elections infrastructure. It's a job well done, and thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. And our next speaker, please.
Our next speaker is Lindsay Sieber or Lindsay Sieber. Again, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Lindsay, you've been unmuted. You can go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. I just want to echo the previous commenters by saying thank you. As a poll worker myself, I saw firsthand again that the elections were smoothly run and secure, and it continues to give me confidence in the integrity of the elections in Cobb County, which, again, as a poll worker is very reassuring and something I'm proud to be a part of. I did just want to ask, and I hope the board could address this during the comments. You know, there were a number of changes made for this election, lessons learned, and again, as a poll worker, things went very smoothly. I'd love to hear more about what changes the board will keep for elections moving forwards to make sure that these gains are sustained, or if there were room for improvement, what room for improvement or what changes would be made going forward to make it even smoother in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And who is our next speaker, please?
Our next speaker is Mark Fonseca. Mark Fonseca.
All right, Mark.
Let me see. Just
On here. He doesn't seem to be logged in.
okay. Thank you. Our next speaker is Monica Delancey.
Okay, Monica, please go ahead.
Hello, everybody can hear me? Thank you. You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Monica Delancey, I'm here. I'm representing We Thrive Riverside Renters Association. Basically wanted to about early and where I want to echo earlier statements that the Cobb County Board of Elections did a wonderful job. Thank you and her staff. Also want to talk about some of the smooth locations on election day. And thank you for notifying people who had to vote from the Pebblebrook location. I saw signs that were placed out to let people know that polling places had changed because people was not aware of that when it took place. Thank you. Thank you for notifying people of that change. Also, special thank you to all the groups who passed out snacks. There were people that passed out bottled water and snacks, and there were food trucks giving out coffee, smoothies, pizza. That was so nice for them to do that. And then there was a live DJ that was going around. I want to recognize that group that did that. I do want to point out the fact that a lot of people are going to be facing eviction in the next couple of months, and I'm concerned about those people who would still keep their address on file as their current address. I would want those people to be challenged because that's no longer their address. And so I'm concerned about, homeless people being afforded the opportunity to participate in democracy and not being penalized because they don't have a home. And that's want to make sure we bring attention to that. And also do note that civic engagement is real. I do want to continue that, educating people about not only just voting on election day, but knowing who they vote for. There's a number of people who just went in and pulled just a party ballot, not knowing who was on the ballot. And they can't even name you the 3 people they voted for local elections. So I don't know if that's a win.
Monica, we can't hear you. I think there may be some bandwidth issues in your area.
Is make sure people follow the vote. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments. And our next speaker will be.
At this time, if we have any other virtual speaker who would like to speak, please indicate so in the Q&A. Otherwise, Mr. Chairman, we have completed our list of virtual speakers who registered in advance. And I do not see any additional speakers that have indicated. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate everyone who participated. I'd like to now move on to our director's election night report and certification of our November 3rd, 2020 general and special election. So Janine.
Thank you. Okay, so what we have to talk about today is a couple of issues have come up with some late ballots that, you know, we've been very transparent about what we've added sort of during the process. And I just wanted to assure everybody that that is part of our process every time. Once election night is over, we spend many days up until certification reviewing all of the paperwork from the poll workers, looking at what has been uploaded to make sure that everything that they scanned at the poll was scanned into the tabulator, and looking at all of our audits to make sure we've got everything. And so, you know, I say it was a late add, but it was really just, we found some things that we needed to fix, and it's part of our audit every time we do elections. So what we had is one precinct, Roswell 01, they had 2 scanners, and on election night, both memory cards came in with their votes, but one was inadvertently not uploaded. And so by comparing the upload list with what the paper ballot count was, because we also count every paper ballot to make sure we know how many paper ballots were cast there, we found that a whole scanner had not been uploaded. So again, that's part of our audit of all the results to make sure that we can come here today during certification and tell you that there were no anomalies. The other item that we had, and this was reported in the paper because we did a report, was that one poll workers had at one time their scanner was not working, it was jamming. So they had voters put their ballots in the emergency slot, which is the right procedure. And then once the scanner was fixed, those ballots that had been put into the emergency slot are supposed to then be scanned by the poll workers. Well, they didn't do that. They maybe forgot about them. The scanner was closed down, and then they realized they had these ballots that had not been scanned. We have a procedure for them to put them in a special red envelope that tells us we need to scan those at the office. But they put them in with the rest of the ballots. So we had no way of knowing which 24, I believe it is, ballots were scanned, not scanned, and the rest were scanned. So we zeroed out that scanner and we scanned all of the ballots at that precinct. And that was at Kennesaw 2A, I believe. I don't recall that one actually. But that, again, that's part of our auditing process to make sure that everything matches up. Just before this meeting started, we also found that there were 2 ballots that had been mailed in with either a signature was missing or a signature mismatch. I don't have the specifics on that. And the person was written to saying, you know, you need to provide the affidavit to cure your ballot. They did that, but their email back had an image of their affidavit that was too small to read. It couldn't be expanded. So they were written to again, and they finally sent in a size that we could read. And that was, so they should have been counted, but they had been put into the reject bucket. And that affidavit, because it came in late, was never applied to those. So we had these 2 ballots that the board just was looking at, and one of them had to be duplicated because they had an overvote on it. So before this meeting, we convened a vote review panel of our Democratic appointee and our Republican Party appointee so that they could duplicate that ballot. Okay, so those are the anomalies that we found. And of course, it's a good thing that you find these things, because then I can say I have checked everything. I've looked at all the paperwork from the polls, and I've found no other anomalies. The anomalies we found, we have corrected. So Bo is going right now to scan those other 2 ballots, and so we'll have corrected reports for you to certify. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about our after election report, because you do have that. We have a version of it to put on screen. There we go, so that others can see it. So this tells you that on election night, the first precinct that came in was at 7:57. And for the polls to close at 7 o'clock on a presidential election And the first poll come in before 8 o'clock was fantastic. We were all shocked that it came in that early. So the last precinct to come in was at 10:44, and that also is extremely early for a presidential election, for them to bring in, to close their poll and to bring in their information. So anyway, we were very pleased with the polls, the precincts that, you know, were able to close down in a timely manner and get their information in. And none of the polls left any of their memory cards or anything that they had to go back for on election night. That also was a huge improvement over June. The absentee ballots were uploaded and released at the times noted here. So we first uploaded the mail. And remember, we had been scanning the mail ballots for 2 weeks. And so having that 2-week head start, we made us able to upload right after 7 o'clock, everything that we had. And then the early voting, which is what AIP is, advanced in person, that was at 9:15. We found that in the future, we could perhaps lobby for the General Assembly to let us close those machines down earlier, as we are doing this early tabulating of the absentee mail. That will help us to get that number down as well. So we couldn't start closing those early voting machines until 7 p.m. And it took 2 hours and 15 minutes to close down those machines and upload all of those ballots. We had what I would consider an early night, considering it was a presidential year. Our office workers left at 1:55 in the morning, and the managers were shortly after that at 2 o'clock. Our turnout is, we had 537,611 eligible voters, and our voter number will be 2 more, right? So we had actually, number voted is 396,551. And I'm sure that still comes out to 73%. Okay. And I'm adding those 2 ballots that we're certifying. So the next section is about provisional ballots. We did have 28 issued during the early voting period, the absentee period. And of those, 13 were counted. At the polls, we had 878 issued and 531 were counted. So we had a total of 544. That was 545. 44, my bad. 544 were counted out of the provisionals. And then down at the bottom of the report talks about the absentee mail and advanced in-person voting. For the by mail issued, we have 156,408. And that is the number. We actually issued about 30,000 more than that, but this is the number that was not canceled or spoiled. So this is like the universe of ballots that could have been voted. The rest were all canceled or spoiled. And then of those received by election day and counted is the 148, and then that would be 481, right? Those would be those 2 others. Okay, so 148, 481 were counted, received by election day. Another 19 were received between election day and the Friday afterwards, and that was the UOCAVA overseas and military. So the total counted by mail, 148,500, because that will be the 2 more. And then our electronic category, that's the electronic ballot delivery. Those would be overseas and military citizens that get their ballot by a secure email link, and then they print it, vote it, and mail it back to us. All those have to be duplicated into a correct ballot that can be scanned. And we counted 1411 of those. Then the in-person, of course, is the 174,980. We had 1 abandoned, maybe?
Yeah, there was 1 spoiled.
1 spoiled. Okay, so a person spoiled their ballot, and so the number counted is 1 less.
I mean, we took the 5 spoiled.
So that would be somebody who is voting at the poll. They print out their ballot and then they decide they don't want to cast that ballot. So it was issued, but it was never cast. Don't have the story behind that. All right, so the total of the absentee and early voting that was counted is 324,890. And we'll get you a corrected report when we finalize this. And so Bo has given you all your election summary report, I believe. Yes. That includes the 2 additional votes that we just added. Oh, thank you. This is the old one. So I think in general, my report would be that election day went very smooth, as was said by some of the speakers, and that was, you know, attributable to so many voters voting early and by mail. It took a lot of pressure off of election day. We did also do a great deal of training for the poll workers that we didn't have an opportunity to do for the June election. And you know, we did a lot of work on our processes to improve the delivery of equipment, the scheduling of the delivery, various different testing changes that we made. We actually had more equipment this time than in the June primary, but we were able to get it out in a timely manner. So again, I can tell you that we have gone over all of the results, all of the returns from the poll workers. We've corrected the 3 things that we discovered. And so the report that you have is the one that I would ask the board to certify today in your usual motion.
Should we ask questions?
Absolutely.
I'm still curious about how many voters requested absentee ballots and either changed their minds as to vote in person or did not receive their ballots and chose to
Well, if
have them.
yeah, we don't have a statistic of how many were canceled because they didn't receive them or how many just decided to cancel a ballot they had already received. We don't have that breakdown, but it was about 30,000 ballots that had been canceled or spoiled.
All right, I have a question if you don't mind here. You have here the, trying to scroll through my report here. You have the turnout of 537,613, maybe, or whatever it is, votes anyway. Or 611 or 613, but 537,000 anyway. Then we have down here under the absentee mail in advance, the total was 324,888. So the number that voted on election day, is that broken down or is that just the difference between those 2?
So if you look at the, he doesn't have the official summary, the election summary report that has the 16 pages. I think that was emailed too, was it? Yeah. It's a lot of pages, but this is the report that comes from the tabulator. This is the official report. So it has it broken down by the 4 categories. The election day was 71,117. Advance voting 174,979. Absentee by mail is 149,911. Provisional is 544. So that comes to a total of 396,551 out of the registered voters. And that's a 73.76%, which actually is fairly low for a percentage, but that is due to there being so many more people registered since 2016. We've had automatic voter registration through driver services. So that has increased the number of people registered, even though perhaps they haven't actually voted.
All right.
I mean, you were spoken with us before about provisional votes and categories for provisional votes. And I just think it's important for people to understand that there are various categories and some of the hearings we do and some of the hearings required for voting.
Yes, so of provisional ballots, the majority of the ones that were counted were those who voted out of their home precinct. So they came to a precinct that wasn't where they were registered and they voted provisional, which is a code OP for out of precinct. Those have to be duplicated onto the ballot that is their home precinct, but they're counted as long as they're eligible to vote. There are some number, I don't have the breakdown, but we can get that to the board. But there then would be a category of PR for a true provisional where their eligibility to vote is in question. And in a phone call to the office, it could not immediately be resolved. So they vote a provisional ballot to give us 3 days to verify their information. And the research that we do includes looking through the driver services file, if they tell us that they voted or that they registered through driver services, or to check back in their records to see if we've missed something or if it was inadvertently moved to another county. So that sometimes happens when the names are similar to one of their voters. So all of those things are our investigation that the voter doesn't have to do anything. The ones that the voter has to do something include the ones where they did not have photo ID when they came to vote. So that is a PI for photo ID. And the voter needs to send in their ID, a copy of their ID for us to be able to cure those. And then there's some category of citizenship, which we did not have one in that category this time. And then, as far as like there is absentee provisional where they registered for the first time to vote by mail and they never provided a copy of their ID. So that ballot is issued provisional and then they have to, again, send us a copy of their ID before we will count that absentee mail ballot.
All right.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to certify the results of this election?
Make a motion. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Mine's raised. See, we got all board members, all 5. Thank you. All right. Our next item is the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes of the previous, I believe it's 2 of them here that we have about meetings that we had. We had to have a special meeting for changing a location, and then we had our election night meeting. Y'all hear a motion concerning these minutes?
Yes.
Pat, go ahead. You make a motion that we approve these minutes, is that right?
I do.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Darrell seconds that. All right, are there any corrections or questions about the minutes? All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. All right, so that's 5-0. Thank you very much. And sorry, I don't have that right in front of me right now, but what is our next item we have on the menu? I believe it's comments or something.
That would be for my comments. You probably are tired of hearing me talk, but I just wanted to briefly update the board on the audit that is going on down at the Jim Miller Park. We got a little bit of a slow start this morning, but we have, most of the teams staffed. We're going to move in a few more people so that we can get all of our 40 tables staffed. And they're moving right along. We did a lot of orientation this morning and instructions to the auditors. But I think they've got a rhythm going now, and we will keep going with our audit through Wednesday. If that's how long it takes, we'll hopefully get done before that. The board has any questions?
Do the parties have observers out there, or?
Both parties, Democrat and Republican parties, have observers. They're allowed to have 1 observer for every 10 tables, and they have to be assigned by the state executive committee. And there was a kind of a slow going this morning to get those letters from the state parties. It is kind of difficult and different to have it come from the state parties.
Yeah.
Usually I'm working with the county parties to get those observers' names. So it's a lot harder for them, I think, to assign people statewide to every county. So it took a while to get that going.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Board members, I was really glad to be there this morning to see the orientation that our employees received. And I did see that there was kind of a slowness in the beginning. There was kind of a tentativeness, a concern, I think, about getting it right with lots of questions, but there was a rhythm before I came to the certification meeting. I had received some questions concerning the process and what it involved. And I wanted you, Denise, if you could kind of explain what's involved. Some of the questions I think you might not include in your explanations, but they're concerns because our voters just do not trust our system. So many of them don't. And I think that we do a wonderful job. We understand the checks and balances that are important, but many other people don't. So I received questions about like who are the people who are involved in this, the employees. Some of the answers I knew, some I wasn't really sure of. Where there are teams of two, which you'll mention in a moment, how are those teams composed? How do we know that there's not some sort of collusion between the members of the team to provide different answers? But again, I understand the checks and balances that are in place, but there are concerns about those things in this particular process.
Okay, so to address those two things, the people that are helping us are from various different groups. We have some poll workers that we call back to do this. And then we also have some of our training facilitators. Some of our full-time employees are involved. And some of them are folks that have been in our absentee counting already. They've worked with us before. And those come from temp agencies. They come from our seasonal employees that we hire that work only during election time. So they come from lots of different groups and areas. And what we did this morning to make sure that there was no collusion is as they arrived, we assigned them to tables. And so we assigned all of the tables 1 through whatever with one person. And then those arriving later were then filled in as the second person at each table. So that our thought was if people were coming together, they may be friends, they may have some alliance. And so they were separated in the tables when they came in. And then the second person came from a later group.
Then there were still questions about what the bins are.
So the main process, just so everybody knows, is we have a tray. We have 5 different trays: Trump, Biden, Jorgensen, write-in, and no vote. And so they'll take each batch, they unseal the box, they have to make sure that it was sealed. There's a chain of custody. And they basically will read, Trump, they give it to their partner. Yes, Trump, put it in the Trump bin. Biden, yes, Biden, put it in the Biden one. They both have to agree that that's the vote. And so it's fairly easy with the ballot marking device ballots. It's a little more challenging with the mail. And so that will take probably longer and be a little slower. But once they get everything sorted in these 5 categories, they'll take the write-ins and separate those by who they wrote in. And if they're certified write-ins, then they get tallied on a tally sheet. If they're not certified, they go into the no votes. And those don't count for anything. And then they determine how many of each of these they have. And then that's recorded on their batch sheet. They both sign it. We know which batch every group has done. So if there is any kind of thing found that doesn't look right, we'll know who worked on that batch.
And certified write-in, the requirement to be a certified write-in is what?
So a certified write-in has to, by a certain deadline, for each election, there's a certain deadline. They have to send in a form to the superintendent saying they intend to be a write-in. And then they have to publish that in the newspaper for whatever jurisdiction they're running for, and then they become certified.
I don't think the only point where that was concerned, the only point of confusion is I spoke with some of the observers in that area, that were strictly observers, not monitors, was why a ballot would be placed in a no vote then if it was in fact a write-in vote for one of the candidates that was already listed.
So,
That was the main topic of conversation
Right.
that I was hearing. I understood, but I just.
yeah, so this would be the case where they didn't fill in the bubble for Biden, Trump, whatever or they didn't tap the selection on the touchscreen for that candidate in the race. But when they then got to the write-in, they selected write-in and then wrote in a candidate that was on the ballot. So the definition of a vote, which is in the code and the state election board rules, is that doesn't get transferred up to the correct person, that they have written in a ballot for somebody who's not a certified write-in. So they had to have selected that name that was on the ballot.
Or it goes into the no vote.
It's a no vote, right? Because it's an uncertified write-in.
That's a good summary of what.
That's what you were hearing.
Yeah, and a good summary of what was happening in that process without all of the detail. And that was just the start for today.
Right, and there'll probably be more, and when we get into the mail ballots that would have the bubbled in, there will probably be some more time that's taken for both parties to agree. And if they can't agree, then the vote review panel that's going to begin tomorrow will review those ballots and determine what the voters' intent was.
Now all of that's open to the public.
Oh, yeah.
I'd like to ask who all is allowed to observe.
So there is an observation area that's sort of roped off that any member of the public can be in. And then each party is allowed to assign a monitor to go inside the area. They can have one monitor for every 10 teams of workers. So we have 40 teams that are possible. So we've allowed 4 monitors from each party.
Does this include the Libertarian Party?
Our directions from the state were that only the state parties, not the political bodies. So just the Republicans and Democrats.
All right, so anybody else, is there a limit to how many other people can be in the observation area that are not the ones appointed by the parties?
Now, the public observation area can have as many people as it will hold and they feel comfortable gathering.
I didn't know whether there was any restriction on the spacing or anything like that.
Now, we weren't given any kind of direction about how, much square footage to allow or what percentage of the total square footage or any of that kind of detail. We've tried to make the area much larger for this than we had for the other early processing area process that we did, early processing of the absentee ballots. We've extended the observation area because we know there's a lot of interest in this. So I think it's quite large, actually.
Okay, has anyone been turned away?
Well, the monitors that had not yet been assigned by their parties were, they understood that they had been assigned, but I had not received any letters assigning them. So we did have to ask them to stay in the observation area until their party had given us the letters.
All right, thank you. And this process will go on to what, is it Wednesday?
We have until Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. to complete it. So Wednesday night will be the end of it.
So looking at it now, of course, I know we've just started today, but how does it look like we're going to be doing on that? Will we be able to get complete before then, or will we run out of time?
It's really too early to tell. I don't know.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Any other board members have any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none, do we have any other business?
I think I'm sorry, Phil, there is some other question from in the chat. Asking whether we will send absentee ballots automatically for the January runoff. And just to make sure everybody knows, we don't send out ballots unless they're requested. And we won't be sending out applications either. The state now has an online portal so that everything can be done electronically.
All right, if I may ask on that line, the people who earlier had checked, they're like 65 or something like that, will they still automatically receive their ballots for the January 5th?
Yes, anybody that is part of the same cycle. So anyone that had selected that they were elderly or disabled and wanted an absentee ballot throughout the entire cycle, they will get it for January.
So if they get one and they want to vote in person, they need to get that ballot canceled.
Right.
All right. I think that pretty well answers my question on that item. Thank you. I would like to mention though that you can go to my voter page. Excuse my voice, I'm having a little trouble with it today. But you can go to my voter page and make sure of your status if you have an absentee ballot coming, and it will tell you if it's been sent out. And if you mail it back in or use a drop box, in a few days it will tell you if it's been received. And also there is a portal called Ballot Tracks that you can apply. If you'll go on our website, I think you'll see a link to that there. You can go to Ballot Tracks, put in your information, email or text or phone number. And I know a few days after I deposited my absentee ballot into a drop box, I received a text message that it had been received and counted. So that will affirm for you if your ballot has been received. All right. If there are no other comments or questions, we'll have our next meeting on December the 14th at 4 p.m. Do we now have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. All right, that's 5-0. Thank you very much. We appreciate everybody, all our board members that were there today and everyone else and all the information that we received. Thank you very much.
So we do need to sign some papers, guys. All right, I'm going to start with you. You got a pen?
Let's sit down.
Are you still there, Phil?
You ready?
Tara, I just want
Okay.
to let you know, Tara, the meeting is still live if you needed to close the meeting for everyone.
Okay.